So today I'm going to talk about a really strange subject, for me at least. It's about anonymity, particularly as it pertains to low-income communities. And I just thought I'd start with a couple of questions. I mean, could you put up your hand if you don't have a smartphone? There's some students in the crowd here. Could you put up your hand if you don't have a credit card? You don't have a credit card. Could you put up your hand if you only have one device in your life? So for most people in the world, they don't have smartphones, they don't have credit cards, and actually only have one device. And most people in this room, you'd find that people have iPads, and they've got TVs, and they've got PCs, and they've got lots of other kind of ways of distracting, but most people only have a mobile phone. So how does this pertain to anonymity? Well, until about almost a year ago, I used to think anonymity was for criminals. I mean, anybody who goes on the internet and looks at a website on the comments section, and I'm glad Nick isn't here because the comments section of Mail and Guardian is also quite dodgy. A lot of what gets written there is written under pseudonyms, and you kind of think to yourself, "Jeez, man, some really weird people out there." And if it wasn't for anonymity, they wouldn't have a voice. So I had this kind of perspective that it's really just for like nasty people and terrorists. And of course, when you read most news, will tell you that it's that anonymity is a bad thing. I mean, it's definitely in ad agencies' best interests that nobody has an anonymous identity. They want to know who you are, and governments want to know exactly who you are as well. So a lot of positive confirmation going out there. And then I bought Mxit, and when I got into this whole community, which is pretty big, and mostly big under the age of 30, I started changing my mind about all of this. I think the main thing is that, well, let me start with my contention. My contention is I don't think it's possible to be free unless you have the freedom to be anonymous. So in particular, I'm going to talk about one community within Mxit that I've been looking at for a little bit now and getting some perspective of. I'm just an observer. I'm certainly not a participant, but these were kind of my takeaways. The Cape Flats, I don't know if any of you know the Cape Flats, between here and Cape Town, about 5 million people, very dangerous place, a lot of drugs, a lot of gangs, a lot of murders, and a lot of people in the Cape Flats are using Mxit. So I have a little petri dish here of seeing what behavior happens when people use anonymous social networks. I've never lived there, but basically, for those of you who don't know what it's like, the gist of it is that you're kind of trapped a lot of the time. You can't leave your house at night because it's a little bit dangerous. You're kind of trapped in your circumstance. It feels like a bit of a poverty trap. The schools aren't the best in the country, and if you want to escape, say the gangs or drugs, etc., there's not a lot of places to turn. You're constantly surrounded by a circumstance that kind of sucks you back into poverty. A lot of people there are using Mxit. Why do they use Mxit? Well, they obviously use it to meet people, but there's an element of anonymity involved in this whole thing. And there are three big areas. The first area is counseling services. So anonymity is used for people looking for help. If you've got a tic habit, who do you turn to? If you're a teenage girl and you're pregnant, who do you go and ask for help from? I mean, if you come from my suburb, kind of East Pretoria, it's hard enough, kind of turning to somebody if you've got some problems. But if you're living in the middle of Mitchell's Plain, it's a little bit harder because you can't necessarily walk up to your police station and say, "Listen, I want to get out of the gang," because your fellow gang buddies kind of check you out and take you out. Same thing for if you've got a pregnancy issue or if you've got HIV, the community ostracizes you. So the fact that people can use mobile phones and be anonymous and get counseling services has changed many people's lives. And although in the end a lot of these services end up with people revealing their true identities, the very fact that people can kind of talk to somebody without giving away their identity, without that, there was no means of getting help. The second thing that I've seen in these communities, through Mxit for instance, is education. Now, I don't know if any of you have been to school, but if anybody who's been to school knows that it's like the last thing you do is in the class put up your hand and say you don't know what's going on. I mean, at least in my school, that is kind of a sure way to make sure that nobody was your friend. So people I mean, if you get to the end of the class and teacher says, "Hey guys, is everybody with me? Can I carry on with the lesson?" Most of the people, well, some people are not with him, and nobody puts up their hand. I mean, the irony is people would rather be stupid than look stupid. So when I was living, at least where I came from, I could go home and read a book or ask my parents or something like that. But if you come from a low-income community, when you go home, there aren't a lot of resources for you to catch up. So people fall behind because of the kind of social pressure not to look stupid in classes, and there's no forum to get extra lessons without their friends knowing about it. So anonymous social networks allow people to get access to counselors, well, not counselors, mostly kind of tutors and teachers and things like that, without revealing their identity. And things like Dr. Maths is a very good example where students at the University of Pretoria, maths students, help kids all over the country in high schools that are looking for extra maths. Funny enough, it spikes whenever the teachers go on strike. And without that kind of forum, they wouldn't be allowed. And probably most importantly, which I realized, is that if they had to use their true identities, they wouldn't use the service. So it doesn't matter that they're anonymous or not. They're getting access to the service. More importantly than the kids, though, is teachers. So if you think there's peer group pressure for kids not to look stupid, I mean, teachers really don't want to look down to their colleagues or to the parents or to the children. So where do they turn? And again, the anonymity provided by a social network can be the difference between a teacher getting extra lessons and just pretending they know all the answers and not knowing anything. The third big thing for anonymity, which I'd also underestimated, is that people get to meet people. Okay, so has anybody here ever met their husband or wife on the internet? Maybe some of you have, but you don't want to put up your hand. Look, I know a lot of people that have actually got married through the internet. And I've come to realize that a lot of people find it very difficult meeting people. Now, if you think it's difficult for you and me to meet people, imagine how difficult it is for somebody coming out of a low-income community like Mitchell's Plain. I mean, I'm sure you can meet people in that community, but to break out of that community is very difficult. So anonymity gives people a way of, firstly, getting past the kind of a judge a book by its cover. I mean, the reason they say don't judge a book by its cover is because everybody does judge books by their cover. And what I saw is that a lot of people are meeting because everyone knows that your Mxit identity might not be your true identity. And even if it is, your photo there is definitely not going to be your photo. People don't judge on that. So they don't go, okay, he's black, he's white, or she's white, she's boy or girl, she male, Christian, Muslim. Doesn't matter. Those things don't really matter because they kind of think it's not really true. So they kind of get through that first layer and then get into a conversation with somebody that they never would have had a conversation with before in real life because they would have judged immediately. And then get to know each other, and then one day they meet each other in real life and they kind of get married, and their appearances don't matter. You're surprised how many stories there are. And that's actually, meeting people without anonymity is a lot more difficult. Probably the most important, and for me, kind of inspirational thing about anonymity is that it gives people a means to escape. So if you're kind of living, near the bottom of the pyramid, and you're kind of being reminded every single day of your circumstance. You walk outside every day, there's all these people around you. You go into your house, there's all these people around you. In public transport, there's people around you. There's no kind of getting away from what you are. Like how much you earn or what you think society thinks of you. And if you can be anonymous in a social network, you can be anything you want to be. Now, before phones came along, it was very difficult to do that. I mean, if you're never alone, how do you actually kind of escape? And nowadays, I mean, most of you have got kids and stuff like that. I mean, that's what kids are doing. That's what I used to do when I was a kid. You take a phone and you're looking at it and you kind of disappear into this thing and you don't know what your kids are doing. Most of the time, people are just escaping into a different world and being something that they want to be rather than something that they have to be. So if you're a girl, you can be a guy. If you're young, you can be old. If you're old, you can be young. If you're a fireman, you can be a banker. If you're a banker, you can be a fireman. You can actually just be whatever you want to be. And it occurred to me that there's no point in trying to help people achieve their dreams if people aren't actually dreaming. And when you're really at the bottom and you're feeling like you're sucked into a poverty trap, then it's very difficult to imagine circumstances outside of those that you're in. And anonymity gives people the freedom to be whatever they want. And that's probably not a bad thing. I've done this talk before, and I thought to myself, that's quite obviously relevant to that kind of part of the movement, the Cape Flats as a poor community. But I know plenty of instances where guys that are really rich and really, really famous that want to be anonymous. Any rich and famous people here? They don't want to put up their hand, especially rich people, because you're going to go ask them for money. And I've met the guy who invented one of the guys who invented the internet, Tim Berners-Lee. This guy, he's a very shy guy, but he says he can't go anywhere anymore because everybody wants to get an autograph and ask his opinion about everything, and all he wants to be is anonymous again. So all he does is go online and find anonymous forums and things like that to kind of hang out on. I think we all kind of, especially when you're in the middle of the pyramid, then you start to think, well, anonymity is not an important thing. It's only for crooks and people who don't have the guts to stand behind their true identity. I think looking at something like Mxit and the Cape Flats, I can see there's a value for that. I think if you ever took that away, a lot of people would lose much more than you can imagine. They'd lose the freedom to speak to people, to help them with drug abuse, etc. They'd lose a forum for learning. They'd lose a place for meeting people that are from far away, people that won't judge them based on their appearances, people they wouldn't have met in their life before. And lastly, you take away anonymity, and I suspect a lot of people's dreams will become a little bit smaller. So, in conclusion, I will end with a conjecture that if you don't have the freedom to be anonymous, can you truly be free? Thank you very much.